Hey, my name's Andrew, and in this review we're talking about this gimbal, the CINEPEER WEEBILL 3E. In this review I'm going to talk about everything you need to know about this gimbal, from what comes in the box, how it works, the pros and cons, and of course my thoughts and opinions. Now, a quick disclaimer, Zhiyun did send me this gimbal. However, this is not a sponsored review. These are going to be my own thoughts and opinions. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's jump into the review. So first I want to talk about what comes in the box. And a quick note on the box itself, it does come in a foam carrying case. It's relatively cheap, but I like the fact that everything fits really nice in that box. And then if you're going to be traveling somewhere, everything's ready to go and protected in that foam case. And so I think that's a really nice touch that they've added everything fitting back in that original packaging, and something that you can transport this gimbal in. So inside the box you'll of course find the gimbal. It does come with a mounting plate as well as a mini tripod, and it comes with two cables, one to charge the gimbal and one to connect the gimbal to a camera. Now I want to do an overview of this gimbal. One of the big selling points of this gimbal is the fact that it is really small and compact. So if you're the type of person who's going to be doing a lot of traveling, or you just want a gimbal that's really small, compact, and lightweight, this gimbal is definitely going to check that box. This is only coming in at $250. I have seen it on sale for closer to $200. I'll leave a link in the description. The battery life on this gimbal is actually amazing. This thing has 16 hours of on time, and it only takes about 2.5 hours to charge up. And the overall quality has really impressed me. The top of this is all made out of a really sturdy metal. The bottom is plastic, but it doesn't feel cheap, and the rubber grip on it makes it especially feel really premium. So as far as a $250 gimbal goes, the quality is not a cheap quality. It's definitely built to last. All right, now let's talk about how it works. So you do have a little tripod that you can screw onto the bottom. All right, I went ahead and mounted the plate to the bottom of my camera, and then from there you will slide the camera into the mount on the gimbal. So from here you will go ahead and balance the gimbal, and I'm not going to go into detail on how to do that because there's a lot of really useful videos here on YouTube. So watch one of those and you'll kind of figure it out in less than 10 minutes. I will say, as somebody who hasn't used a lot of gimbals, the balancing process wasn't super tricky. It made a lot of sense. And so right now I'm going to balance the gimbal. So the gimbal has now been balanced, and as you can see, it is ready to go. Now there are a couple different buttons and knobs I'm going to talk about now. You have a joystick on the front of it, which will control the gimbal up and down, left and right. You have a record button, so if you would plug your camera into the gimbal or connect it via Bluetooth, you'd have the control to just hit that button and start recording, which is super useful. You have an M button, which we'll get back to here in a minute, but on the side we have a power button, a menu button, and a scroll dial to select some different settings. And then on the front of the gimbal, we have a scroll wheel. That is customizable. You can set it to different settings. And then you of course have a little toggle here. The toggle is really nice because if you have used the thumb dial here to adjust it and it's kind of off centered, you hit that button twice on the front and it goes back to that centered position. And if you hit it 3 times, it goes into a selfie mode. So if you maybe would want to do some vlogging with a gimbal, boom, there you go. Hit it 3 times and it goes back to the regular mode. So let's go back to that M button. This is the mode, and right now it's on PF mode, which I'm not really sure what these modes stand for, but number 1 is kind of the standard kind of following mode. As you can see, as I move it left and right, it moves left and right. But if I move it up and down, it's locked on that horizon. It's not going to move the camera up and down. So that's a really nice mode if you're going to be following, most kind of like Hollywood kind of shots, left and right pans, but you don't want the up and down axis to be moving. The next one is L mode, and as you can see, no matter how I move the gimbal left, right, up, or down, it's locked in on that subject that's right in front of me. Now if I hold down on the dial, it releases that, so I'm able to move it, and adjust what I want that to be focusing on. But as soon as I release that toggle, it's locked back on that subject. So that's a super nice mode if you're going to be, one subject that you're kind of focusing on and you're going to be walking around. That keeps that, center object in focus all the time. Now finally, the F mode is, I think, going to be like the most action mode. I think a good scenario to think of is like following somebody on a dirt bike, going up and down jumps. This is going to be able to follow up and down, left and right, keep all that action in frame, and it's super easy to kind of control that and keep that subject in focus. So all three of those modes are really useful. I will say my favorite thing about this gimbal after using it for a while is that it just works. I think as somebody who hasn't used gimbals a lot, that is a really big pro for me. And also, you kind of can't expect to get a gimbal and just automatically get smooth shots. You do have to learn how to use a gimbal to get those smooth shots. So there is a bit of a learning curve, but it is pretty simple with this gimbal. Now moving on to my pros and cons. First of all, I really like the build quality of this gimbal. It feels very solid. Even the plastic doesn't feel cheap. The grip feels really solid in the hand. And the overall material of the gimbal, the top of the gimbal is all metal and feels very durable. Number two, it's very easy to use. As I was mentioning earlier, I don't use gimbals a lot, and being able to kind of just pick this up and use it right away means that this is a very simple gimbal for anyone who's a pro or a beginner. The setup process is really easy. It's a little tricky at first, but once you understand what you're doing, you can do it in like less than 2 minutes. The price of this gimbal is awesome, only coming in at $250. It's a very competitive price. One of the big selling points of this particular gimbal is that it is very small, compact, and lightweight. It's not too small where it feels uncomfortable when you're using it, but it's small enough that you could literally fold this thing up and throw it in a backpack and it wouldn't take up that much room. This gimbal also has the ability, taking the plate off, you can mount it sideways, and you can take, right now it's in horizontal mode, but you can flip it and turn it into vertical mode, which in this day and age is super useful because more and more people are creating more vertical content. So you have that option to film both directions, and it's pretty easy to swap it. All right, and finally, as I mentioned earlier in the review, the travel case is super handy. If you're gonna be traveling a further distance and you don't want to just throw this in a bag, get it all beat up, you can put it in that traveling case and everything is good to go. Now, this is one of those reviews that I get to the end and I have to say some kind of con, but really after using this gimbal, it's really hard to come up with any kind of issues. Everything just works really well. The build quality is good, the price is good, and I feel like there's not really any cons that stick out to me after using this gimbal. So I definitely recommend it. I feel like as somebody, as I mentioned multiple times in this review, somebody who doesn't use gimbals a lot, I'm more used to handheld shots. So now that I have a gimbal, I definitely feel like there's a lot of opportunities where I can implement this into my workflow. And I just love having tools that make me feel more creative, giving me the opportunity to get different styles of shots, and all for a really competitive price. So if you guys do want to check this gimbal out, there will be a link in the description. If you had any comments or questions at all, leave those in the comment section below. And if you want to see more budget gear reviews, consider subscribing. And if you do, I'll catch you in the next video.